Welcome back to Inside the Musical Mind, and it is my privilege this time to welcome the one and only Vinnie Dombroski from the band Sponge. How are you today?
Good, Peter. The privilege is mine.
You say that now. So I want to congratulate you. Just I think April 20th, so it's been about a week. You released for Record Store Day the new say new version, but Planet Girls for on red vinyl, right?
That's correct. Yep.
How's the reception of that been going so far?
People are pretty pumped up about the music. I'm happy to say, and essentially the record that's released now was the first attempt at making the third Sponge record.
Right.
So what people know as the New Pop Sunday, that's kind of the second attempt. That's what we went back to the drawing board and just rethought some songs, remixed some songs, re-recorded some songs. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a really cool example of how they say every album is a moment in time, because from New Pop Sunday, which was recorded, I assume, just a little bit later than this original version, there's some significant changes. I mean, different songs. Got things like the track listing's different. I think When You're on Fire, Baby, You Gotta Roll is not on Planet Girls, right?
Yeah, there's definitely some different. Yeah, I mean, Let's Get Together Now. That track never made the actual cut of the New Pop Sunday record. So yeah, there's a lot of different things going on. But I listen with fresh ears after all these years, and I go, there's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think Disconnected is another one that's on one or the other. And I've noticed it is interesting also because the difference between the two, the production wise, say like Pollyanna.
Yes.
On this new released version, I keep wanting to say new, obviously it's not new, but the newly released version of Pollyanna, bass is way heavier in the mix when that first bass line comes in. Seems to me your vocals have a little less treble on them. They're a little more present, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really a whole different approach. I think by the time we got to the song for the New Pop Sunday record, Pollyanna became this much more, tripped out, loopy, almost U2-y kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And it really took on a whole different life than the more straight-ahead rock approach, which was what people are hearing now on Planet Girls.
Both have their merits.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, But it's just like we felt there to represent the song at that time, we would just take some other chances and do some other things production wise.
Was it a thing where it made sense to release it now? Was it previously tied up like with ownership of the label? Was it a legal matter? Was it just a matter of you revisiting and saying, hey, this is some good stuff, let's release this?
Yeah, pretty much like it's just sitting. And some of these songs no one's really heard.
Right.
Well, the general population of Sponge fans have never heard. So it just seemed like it was an opportunity to give folks kind of a glimpse into what we were doing back then, at that point in time. And some of the songs, I just go, to listen to them so many years later, I go, it's some pretty cool stuff. I'm not even going, I cringe at listening to this stuff. I go, with fresh ears, it's pretty cool things that are going on in some of those songs.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome treat for fans, because not very often do you get to like, oh, by the way, here's an entire album we made that you never heard from the first few years of the band's,
Right.
public persona. That's pretty amazing. A couple questions about creativity in general. Talking about that, when albums do get released, do you get pretty set in the way, like you've come to live with it? Obviously, once an album's released, you've written it, you've played it, you've gelled with it for months before the public ever hears it. Are you the type of person that gets it set, like this is the song and that's what you become in love with? Or do you ever sit back and go, gosh, I wish we'd changed that one note, or I wish we hadn't cut that part that we ended up cutting? Do you ever overanalyze your songs like that? Or
Well, I think that's why we have Planet Girls. We had that opportunity to go back and do exactly that. But the first two records, those records were made by the band,
Hmm.
produced by the band. We had some A&R involvement with Pablo Matheson that worked for the label at that time. So it was pretty much all in house. And when you're working in that kind of environment, there's no like going back and going, I wish I would have changed that, or maybe we would have played this differently. It's pretty much when you release that record, you're pretty happy with it, and you go, we're ready to say it's done.
Right.
And yeah, and the third record was not that record.
Yeah, and I understand that you were taking a little bit of different direction, but you always had a good variety in your stuff. And one thing I liked about Sponge from the get-go is you were never you were never afraid to really throw in like dissonant parts and varied textures. Like obvious examples like Wax Ecstatic with that lead break that like that's just
Sure.
insane. But even like later on stuff like I Want to Lose from Galore Galore starts off with that weird
Yeah,
trippy loop thing. And you guys were never afraid like a thing that would initially hit a listener sideways. You're like, no, this works. Use it.
of course. And we were never one of those bands that wanted to release the same record over and over and over again. It certainly works for a number of bands, but we didn't feel we needed to be pigeonholed in that way. And I look back at a band like the Pretenders, and
Mm-hmm.
what Chrissy Hine did with the old band, which was, they had their just total rocking songs like, you know, Bad Boys Get Spanked or something, and then they had just beautiful pop songs, and that variety of music within one band, you can carry that on record to record to record. We can have a Rod Pinata, and we can have a song like Drowning on the same record, and it's the same band. But that's kind of the breadth of what it was that we were doing at that time, and I think able to still pull off.
Oh, I think so. And you definitely did. And that's one of the beauty once you get to know a band, even when a band like you has diverse songs, you can still appreciate the style coming through, even with different sounds and different approaches.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like Zeppelin when they
Yeah.
released like was it In Through the Outdoor or something? I think it was that record where they had Candy Store Rock, I think was the name of the tune. And I first played on a jukebox at a restaurant, and I'm like, this is the new Zeppelin song. And I played it, I'm going, this is Zeppelin? It sounded like Elvis Presley, you know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like, but you still go, well, it's Zeppelin. They can do whatever they want. They can play like the first two records were all just heavy hitted and stuff and some blues songs, but then they turn around and do something like Kashmir. You just go,
Right.
what is
Well,
that?
even Led Zeppelin 3, they kind of made a left turn, did a lot of acoustic stuff on that.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you had the immigrant song, but then you had all the kind of like, you know,
Tangerine and Gallows Pole and
yeah, tripped out acoustic stuff, and you're just like, and it was certainly way different than, the first two records were like Dazed and Confused and Good
right.
Times, Bad Times, and you're just like, some Zeppelin fans, I'm sure, would have been like, oh, all we want is the heavy shit. We want Good Times, Bad Times, times 10. We want Dazed and Confused, times 10. But then here comes the third record, or here comes Houses of the Holy, and you go, wow, where did that come from? And it's a whole different production. It's a whole different style of songs. Now we're introducing more keyboard. It's just you go, okay, why make the same record over again?
Right. Yeah. And when you're into a band when you're younger, I think that helps you grow as a music listener while the band's growing and expanding their style. It helps, like I know when I was, a kid getting into, I started with rock and I wanted the prog. So I went from Rush to Yes, and you get some stuff that's less bombastic guitars and you just expand your palette.
Oh, without a doubt. But you go from Rush and Yes, and then you go all of a sudden Primus comes on the scene, and you're just like, yeah, I'm ready for Primus, man.
Right.
And then I go all the way back to Bowie. Could he have been Ziggy Stardust his whole life and not the Thin White Duke? I go, no, not if it's Bowie. Bowie can do whatever he wants. And then Iggy Pop with the Stooges, and then Iggy working with Bowie and doing what he had done stylistically with Bowie, which is some of my favorite stuff,
Right.
Iggy going forward. I just go, I respected the Stooges, but Iggy as a musical artist, I go, it was a perfect place for Iggy to kind of go. So
Sure.
for us to be, pigeonholed to some kind of style or place, to me was just not really exploring the breadth of the band.
With the internet and the whole worldwide culture now of music, do you think that the way things are now, that your geography will have less of an impact on who you are as a musician? Because you're from Detroit and you grew up, and Detroit has a history. MC5, you got Ted Nugent, all that stuff. Nowadays, kids are exposed to metal bands from Finland, and it just wasn't available to previous generations. Do you think where you're from will be less of an identifying marker now?
It's a great question. I just, I think I'm lucky. Okay, it's like Seattle. All right,
Right.
Seattle people will always be like, well, there was that label Sub Pop, and there were all these cool bands, blah blah blah. Detroit is probably, it on that level with its, if you're Detroit techno person, you're a Detroit rapper, you're a Detroit rock band. It's just the rock band thing just seems to be, it keeps coming and coming and coming. There was the grunge thing, then there's Jack White and the White Stripes,
Mm-hmm.
and keep fast forwarding with things. You get Greta Van Fleet, so it's just, and you can have any opinion you want regarding Greta Van Fleet. The thing is that just another big rock band the world recognizes, and they're from the Detroit area, so you just go. It just, I think Detroit will always be different. I think Detroit, geographically speaking, people are into. Oh, they're from Detroit. I gotta listen.
You started off as a drummer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Loud House.
yeah. Yep.
Who were some of, before you got into singing, who were some of your drum idols?
Wow, man. Like, I was always just blown away by Mike Borden,
Mm-hmm.
Faith No More.
Yeah.
When I look back, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction. Uh, I just thought he was fantastic.
Great snare sound.
Oh my God, But then even going further back than that, Carmine Appice. I thought
Sure.
Carmine was just a monster. John Bonham was always a big, influence drum wise. So, yeah, I think those drummers, those iconic rock drummers, were always someone or some folks that I looked at that were big influences.
It's funny when you learn things you didn't know before. Like I mean, it's probably been 10, 15 years ago when I learned that Carmine played the drums on Pink Floyd's Dogs of War.
No kidding.
And when you go back and listen to it, you're like, how the hell did I never hear it? It's just so obvious.
Well, when you talk about those kind of drummers like Bonham, Carmine, you could tell it was Bonham or Carmine playing just by the way they hit their snare drum, just
Right.
by the way they hit their kick drum.
It just sounds like heavy sticks.
It's really something that's kind of gone away in music. Not to be a baby about crap, but I just go, that's why I always thought Mike Borden had a sound, Stephen Perkins had a sound. I love drummers like Steve Jordan. I think he's got a sound. It's just unmistakable. Like you can just hear it's them playing.
Right. Now, as far as Sponge, obviously this just came out. Any tour? I know you guys are on the road a lot, and you always got your Orbit Sons and stuff like that. But the Lavatorium was 2021, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
And by the way, Stitch was a great song. But
Thank you.
what's new on the horizon for Sponge themselves?
Well, we do have a cover record that we're putting out on Cleopatra.
Okay.
The label Cleopatra. They put out the Lavatorium record. They did the demo to the Detroit record, but they asked us to do a cover record. So we struggled as to how do we do a cover record? But since it's the 30th anniversary of Rodney Piñata, we decided to go back to 1994 and just go down like the Spin Top 100 or Spotify. Who was making music back then that became popular in 1994? So we picked 10 songs from artists that were becoming popular or had a popular song in 1994. So we got Danzig, we're doing Can't Speak, we're doing No Excuses by Alice in Chains, we're doing Fade Into You by Mazzy Star,
Cool.
we're doing Supersonic by Oasis. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of cool stuff on that record. So that record's done. We're done mixing it. We just have to deliver it. Then we have a 30th anniversary record that we're putting together, which is unreleased stuff from 1993, 94.
Very cool.
Some remixes of some stuff. So there's stuff that we can't remix, but it's stuff on mixtapes that haven't been released. And then we're recording some new stuff for that record. So we just got done recording a couple new songs, and we got to mix some of the old stuff. But we're putting that together. We're hoping to have that done in about 4 weeks. You know, we just got to bust ass and get it done. So we have that coming as well. And we're doing a tour in July with Power Man 5000 and Tantric too. So we'll be out there on the road with those bands starting in July all the way up through beginning of October.
Well, yeah, and I want to reiterate, I'm jumping courses here, but make sure people know that the Planet Girls was a limited edition vinyl release, I think 1,200 copies.
Right.
But it is streaming because I know I can get it on YouTube and all that. And so I would urge anybody who's not listened to it to get out there and listen, because it's got some great stuff on it. And that's really exciting about the covers album and the new unreleased stuff from, you said 93 and 94. That is cool.
I'm pretty pumped up about it because the new stuff that we've done, I think it's just killer. You know, It's always great to write new music, record it, and some of the stuff that we found, you know, when you have these analog tapes that are so old, they accumulate moisture. So before you can actually play them, in hopes of digitizing them, you know, you got to run that tape into a Pro Tool session file and hopefully digitize. You have to bake these things. So it takes hours at low temperatures to bake all the moisture out. So it was like painstaking stacks of tapes and baking them and seeing what's on them. And, you know, it's pretty cool stuff. I got to say, I'm pretty pumped up to get the music out there to let people see what we were doing back then.
Yeah. Well, very cool, Vinny. I appreciate it. And by the way, what's the best for people looking for the new stuff and all that kind of thing? What are the best websites, social media, et cetera, to tune into all things Sponge and all your projects, whether it be ongoing things and past things like the Lucid, all this stuff?
Oh my God. Yeah. The Lucid. I mean, you just got to search the Lucid on YouTube and you'll get all that music. You know, there's so much cool stuff that we've done with the group, and I'm really proud of that. And for Sponge, if you go to spongetheband.com, that's our website. Facebook, it's Facebook, you know, /Sponge Rocks. Yeah, facebook.com/Sponge Rocks, and you'll get to our Facebook and see what's going on there.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more stuff from you. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and we will be hearing more from you soon.
Thanks for your time, Peter. Cheers.
Hey, Vinny, thank you so much. It was an honor.